Welcome everybody to the Kubernetes SIG network meeting for Thursday, December 9th, 2021. First up, we have issue triage. Can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
All right, we'll just click through some. Tim filed this one. Does anybody know what this one is about offhand?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
So
What should we do with it?
this is tied to another cap. So the thing is, this started with right now when you create a cluster, usually you have the DNS as the .10, the 10th IP address, okay? And we are hard coding this in kubelet. So Tim's idea is to not depend in any convention on IP addresses, to say, well, I just want this service to be the DNS IP. And this is the discussion. Because there is a cap related to this that I have, that is, I added to the agenda, that is to be able to reserve some space in the service side, so static addresses cannot be hijacked by dynamic addresses. But the question here is that if kubelet would be able to reserve the DNS service instead of the IP, to avoid to depend on conventions on IP addresses. But this has some history that you can read in the comments.
So it sounds like we should triage accept this one.
I think that this is more a philosophical and discussion issue to have 200 comments and people to say, well, I think that this would be good or bad. I mean, right now it's not ideal. The solution is to hard code an IP, and I agree with Tim that we should have something better. But having something better with all the dependencies that we are carrying for 5 years is complicated.
Okay. Should we just leave it unassigned for now and continue the discussion until some actual work items come out of it?
Yeah, I think that's very
okay. Cool. All right, next up, pod termination handling kicks in before ingress controller has had time to process. Does this look legitimate? Should we accept it? And then second question, who wants to take it?
I'm trying just to figure out if this is something specific of Ingress and Nginx, or if that's something, it seems something more generic, as they are saying something about AWS load balancer. But you can assign that to me then. I can take a look into that.
Okay.
But there is a lot of discussion. I don't know if Lars was going to speak about something.
I thought you could set this in the pod, right? Like the weight. Like if a pod is not dying, not the right. If a pod doesn't die, you can set how long until you ungracefully kill it, or something. I feel like this might be user configurable, but okay, I don't know.
The blog link. It's a very, very good picture at it that shows exactly how it. Scroll down a bit to the first image. You see that. Stop there. You can see that this is not an easy problem to solve in Kubernetes, because it depends on how it works. It's two different paths from the API server, and the pod cannot possibly know when all IP table rules are written, which is basically what they want. So I cannot see how this can be solved in Kubernetes actually.
Lars, would you work with Ricardo to figure out what we should do with that particular issue then?
Yeah, sure.
Can you CC me as well? This is Bowie. Because
Okay.
we are hitting some of these things, I think.
Yeah, I'll just assign you two. All right.
Thank you.
Next. Oh, Antonio's already on this one.
Yeah, I've
So
been
we'll skip it.
experimenting with this. This is going to be fun. I don't know if any of
I've
this.
seen a small PR from Antonio, so probably you should just assign him something like 50,000 lines. Something like that.
The thing, this is going to be fun. I don't know if any of you have experience with this HTTP3 in production, but I mean, it's going to be fun.
So
Antonio, can you say how this will be different than just UDP, or are we building more knowledge about HTTP3?
That's the thing that I'm trying to figure out. So this is UDP under the hood. So the thing is, when you have UDP, how do you load balance that? And it seems that there are several artifices, trying to explain how you should do that. But I mean, in theory, the backend should be able to talk with other backends. That's one solution. The other is the user space logic should be able to sign out the client. I don't have it clear how this is going to work, honestly. That's what I'm saying.
I was actually interested in this topic as well. And I think at a minimum, it could be documentation of the fact that, a minimal UDP load balancing is one way to address HTTP3. But is there something more beyond UDP load balancing?
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's another interesting thing. That is, I have a link. I need to share it from HA Proxy that the people is claiming just add UDP please, and they are saying we are not going to add UDP as load balancer. So that's why I'm saying this is going to be crazy. That's a good point. Thank you.
So yeah, if there's any design discussion on this, I'm happy to participate.
I'm trying to doing some experiments for the API server. If I have something, I will try to write it up and share in the mailing list or a demo or something. Because I mean, for the people that love networking, I really love the idea. I mean, it's just instead of TCP, you just use the UDP and maximize, the data plane to forward IP packets and UDP packets. But I couldn't investigate more, but it looks exciting to me. That's like a great improvement to HTTP.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, well, we'll leave it assigned to Antonio then. I got 5 minutes. Next up is UDP traffic to a single pod behind a cluster IP is black holed when the destination pod is recreated. Wrong contract.
They open a similar one, but they have a complex setup, and they say that it's in GKE. I mean, without a reproducer, this is hard. I tried to investigate. I don't know if Bowie or people in Google, is able to have more data.
Have you read through it? Is this the classic thing where, like, we just had to make a choice whether to keep the connection sticky due to UDP or to shoot down the UDP connection, but then you get disconnected? Or is this a bug?
The thing is, I really, in these last 2 releases, I think that we have most of the UDP cases covered. I mean, we added a lot of tests and fixed a lot of bugs. But this, if you see this, they have a really complex setup. They have an external source with a load balancer.
Okay, assign it to me then. I'll take a look.
I think that there has to be some, we have a lot of IP tables there, and it using the
Okay.
traffic, I'm not able to make my mind. For
Okay,
me,
I'll take a look.
if you reproduce it, that's easy. Once you reproduce, it's a matter of time. It's just start to take logs and with patience, but without reproducing and only reading, it's very complex to solve these bugs. I'm happy to help if you are able to reproduce, but I don't have time to try it.
Yeah, I'll take a look to see if this is actually an existing thing or just a bug.
Okay, thanks. Next one, node port service fails to function for ingress when targeted by a netto. I'm gonna assume
I
that's
think I had already commented on this a few times, but it seems like a Calico issue. I'll follow back up.
Okay, can we assign it to you and you can?
Yeah,
toss
sorry,
it
I meant to.
Okay. Cool.
What is a netto? What is a netto?
A netto? I don't know.
Yeah, from the title of the issue. I assume it's a mistype,
Oh,
but I could be wrong.
yeah, I think you meant net Paul.
Yeah.
Okay. No, sorry.
It's a good no. It's a good point.
All right, flaky GCE scale correctness test. Does anybody know what's going on here?
Is that a networking issue?
There was a similar one. I agree with Huawei, but it's not this one.
I mean, it looks like there's 2 node port tests that are failing.
But assign to me, these things, I mean, at the end of the release,
all right.
But I agree with Huawei. I think that was Huawei. There was a similar one.
Do you want to be on this one too, Bowie?
All right.
You don't have to be.
No. You can assign me if I can help out on this.
Sure. All right, and probably the last one, standard for type equals load balancer service TLS configuration.
I think we sent them to look at gateway and see what ...
Yeah, I agree. That's where Tim was already heading with this. This feels like something that's in the scope of gateway. Yeah, you can have me handle this one.
Okay, I'm just looking for somebody to assign it to. All right, and 1 more minute. Let's see if we can do one more. Key proxy, move proxy or delete endpoint connections to util. So it looks like we have 2 different functions, one in IPVS, one in IP tables. Maybe they do the same thing.
Seems like should send a PR and see what it looks like.
I mean, there's so many things in the kube proxy that are like that. But yeah.
We have another discussion. Lars is here. I didn't bring it to the agenda. I will, with the logic for SCTP.
If you want to assign that one to me as well, then I've been following some cleanup in kube proxy, so I can. Me and Dan Winship was commenting on that as well, so probably it's something worth to take a look.
Okay, I will assign it to you, and with that, we are out of triage time. So I will stop sharing my screen, and first up, we have Proposed New Construct Network Profiles by William. You're up.
Okay, so let me share this real quick. Okay, so I'll remove this. Okay, what we want to propose and eventually see if we can bring a cap, or if there's a better place to identify this, is a concept about network profiles. And the idea is that there's a lot of constructs in Kubernetes already. And this in particular is for pods that are affected by the use of multiple networks. In general, when we have multiple networks, like it doesn't matter if it's from the media or the telco or even on HPC, those networks usually have some attributes or some functional requirements that are quite strict in general. So, and the way that we do have networking today, there's nothing that can help a pod, for example, making sure that that's being really guaranteed. So as in other parts of Kubernetes, for example, what happened with CPU managers, that I can go and say, hey, I need one core really allocated for me. So the idea is, okay, so what if we can bring functional requirements as part of the network definitions, but it will be an abstraction layer basically on everything that exists, have an opportunity to bring this concept. So, and the idea is that the CNI does not need to explicitly support this. It can be, again, just a CRD that can manage and handle this. And the CNI, if it chooses to, it can provide direct support to these new constructs. And in addition, this new construct will allow for example, enhanced functionalities, like, for example, guaranteeing latency or traffic prioritization, etc., to be part of the definition of the network that the pod can consume. And there will be multiple venues that a platform can choose to support this if they choose to. So, for example, one can be using platform-specific CNIs, which will not be different from any plugin, any CNI plugin with extensions, or just using the existing CNI, let's say having multis and doing CNI chaining to provide those constructs, or other mechanism under which you can bring network connectivity to the pod. And I will, okay. The other part is that since these are for functional requirements, it is not for it to be unlimited resources. On the contrary, we should have the ability to say, okay, so let's say if this is my streaming network, if this is my front haul in the case of mobile, I don't want to, based on the resources, I know that I can support, let's say, up to 10 of this. So it becomes an allocatable resources with strict quantities of those. Now, if for some reason any of those functional requirements, let's say this type of network can only work if the packet loss is less than this, or the latency is lower than this, if that is no longer true, remove that as that node does not longer support that type of resources, such that no additional workload is scheduled into that node that need that type of resource. So basically two objects. One, the network profile class, which is more traditional or generic, which will basically be something like, okay, this is the maximum latency. And again, these are just examples. And let's say that I want to also map DSCP codes that are in the network. So if it maintain this, then let's say I can say this is a signaling class. From the perspective of the object that is a consumable one, will be the network profile. In this case, a network profile is not just one network anymore, but all the networks that, for example, in this case, an open front haul. An open front haul is comprised of 3 or 4 different type of network, each one with different functional requirements. For example, an S-plane has a very extreme low latency requirement. If that is not there, there's no even a reason why to allow a workload to be scheduled there. An M-plane has different type of latency. So actually, this is more traditional network, and the same happen with others. And the idea is, for example, an S-plane will never have a bunch of traffic, so it can go and delegate, say, make sure that there's a rate limit. Or, hey, what if now I can consume network policies? So if there are network policies that are supported in the system, I can bring all those concepts together, and all of this under, it's an open front haul. And then based on the quantity, something like, for example, give me the network profiles. Okay, I have an open front haul, and the capacity on this cluster is of 4, because that's the number of that I can support. And let's say the available number of those. From the pod perspective, it's very similar to, again, the annotations, because we don't have anything better today. And let's say I want 1 front haul here, or if this is a pod that can consume 2 of these, let's say 2. And only by having these 2, when it comes into, let me just go here real quick, inside the pod, it will have, for example, if we do an IP link, it will have all those networks. And those networks, again, will be following that functional requirements. So they are valid at that creation time. And yeah, that's from that perspective. Obviously, the ideal scenario will be, again, this is a dream, if we could have something that really go into the pod section. But again, that's, yes, sure, one of these days when elephant flies. So it is really about the creation of the network profiles and network profile class. So, and that is it. And I would like to understand if there's anything that you guys are working on that could be related to this, or if this is worth a cap to start discussing it. Yeah, that. And I did this really quick just because I know there's a lot of topics in the agenda.
All right, thanks. Yeah, is anybody working on something similar? I mean, the usual route that we go for these kinds of things is custom resource definitions, kind of standards outside of Kubernetes for the moment. Make sure that it's something that multiple groups of people want to work on together.
Okay, are those defined through caps as well, or are those done completely isolated? What's
could
the
be
route?
You know, it could just be like kind of a interest group or a subgroup of people who want to work on it. The first step is, I guess, to figure out if other people are interested in this and if they're working on it as well.
Yeah, I would recommend mailing out on the mailing list. I think this sounds very similar to network plumbing stuff we've seen before.
And maybe also some of the network service mesh stuff. There might be overlap, but that's...
Yeah. So I would definitely email something out just to collect everyone together. And then you can probably see like how to kind of proceed.
Okay.
There's also that CNI working group that meets on Wednesdays, Dan, right? Like this might be an interesting thing to bring up there, I kind of think.
Yeah, it might be a little higher level than that, though.
Yeah.
Given the intersection with Cube, but it definitely has some overlap.
Okay.
All right. Does that sound good for the moment, William?
Yes.
Okay.
I will find the email and
yeah, it's the SIG Network Google group. If you're not already subscribed, just join the group and somebody will approve, and then you can send out mail to the group.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks. And also, if you're able, can you put a link to the slide deck into the SIG Network meeting minutes?
Oh, absolutely. Let me
That would be
just
helpful too.
put that-
Thank you.
put that in. Yes.
All right. Thanks. Moving along, Bowie, you want to talk about read-only archive of these meeting minutes?
Yeah, I have to step out, but that's exactly, the topic is exactly as written. Is that I think at some point a couple weeks ago, someone accidentally deleted all the notes, and then we had to restore it. So I was wondering if we just wanted to copy off like the tail to some read-only thing, so it just can't get lost or corrupted.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. The big question is, where should that be? How should it be stored? And if it is a Google Doc, whose account should that be under?
Is it possible to convert it to Markdown and just dump it on the website?
Can we convert it to Markdown?
I think you can. But anyways, we don't have to spend all day on this. It was like, I think at some point, someone noticed the doc was completely empty.
Yeah, it's not a bad
And had
idea.
to undo it.
Sure. I can take a look at that.
Did you do that, Ricardo? Was that you? I think you're the one that deleted it.
No, not me.
Okay.
But I would remove my access if I were you. I'm good deleting stuff.
I mean, I can remove anybody's access that doesn't want edit access anymore. Okay. All right. I'll take a look at that. Andrew, next up, open CNP kept questions.
Yeah, so I don't want to take up too much time here. It's just another continuous poke. We're getting to the point internally within the SIG Network Policy API subgroup that we think this KEP is again getting closer to be ready to rumble. We have summarized some of the main points that we think would be great for people to review and give their opinions on the KEP itself in the comment I linked. We also are just looking for general review. We're happy to answer questions now if there are any, or we can do another one like short Q&A in the next SIG Network upstream meeting, or we can answer questions on our bi-weekly Monday meetings with the SIG Network Policy API subgroup. So yeah, it's kind of just a shout out to give that a look and answer any questions now. Sanjeev and Yang are also here. They've been working pretty diligently on this as well.
If we have any questions that would take like 1 or 2 minutes, maybe we can entertain those now. Otherwise, we should probably move on. Anybody? Questions for Andrew?
And feel free to reach out on Slack. We're all hanging around. So yeah, if you care about CMP and you want to see how it's actually going to be implemented in alpha, please check it out, because we're coming down to the wire and we'd really like to get at least the first draft of the KEP merged. Thank you.
All right.
Are there any blocking discussions on there, Andrew?
They are all, the blocking discussions are summarized in the comment I linked, I would say.
Okay.
I would not say that there were like a blocking things. It's just that, there are design choices, maybe, 1 or 2. So, people in our subgroup are on some aspects maybe have different opinions on those, but we are fine with either one. So essentially, we just needed some community support in terms of looking at these and gather opinions on how people think one design choice over the other. So we can just go with it and try to make this alpha. And that's just where we stand right now.
Maybe let's do next SIG Network meeting, if this doesn't happen asynchronously, let's set aside a longer period to talk about what's left.
Sounds good. And
I just have a feeling no one's going to.
Yeah, that's what happened last time. So I'll keep, I'm going to start poking like weekly at least in SIG Network, just to remind people. So
yeah, unfortunately, I think the next SIG Network will be like 4 weeks from now.
All right.
So that's great. Good. 4 weeks from now. Let's have that at the top of the agenda, and let's just say we need to decide. Gives people 4 weeks to do their homework, right?
Well, the last time the group had 6 weeks, and there was not a single comment.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that, we can, let's talk on Slack and let's figure out a way to really maybe over communicate what we need to get done.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll keep over poking. Thanks, everyone.
All right, next up, KEP 2086, graduation to GA for promote service internal traffic policy.
Yes, this is me. I work at Google with Bowie, Tim, and Rob Scott, and I want to get involved with SIG networking. And one of the idea that they had was for me to take this one, see what it would take to graduate it and make it graduate. I had a meeting with a few of the folks, and I wasn't sure what is the etiquette for me to take over this KEP. It doesn't seem to be worked on anymore. And the person it's assigned to, I couldn't see any GitHub contributions since June of this year, and I was not able to reach them. So I put a comment on the KEP saying I'm interested on working on this, and I'm just curious when I can just assign the issue and start making progress.
Yeah, it looks like it was Andrew Sai Kim who originated it. Does anybody know if Andrew is around at this point? I think it would be good at least to try at least one more time to contact Andrew and see if he was okay with somebody else taking it over.
Yeah, Andrew was AFK for a bit, but
Okay.
he was in a different SIG meeting yesterday, but he has recently changed his role in some ways. So it would be great if we poke him again, but yeah, he is responding, but he may want somebody to take this over.
Okay, I'll try again. I also tried to contact the person it is currently assigned to with no response. So I'll try Andrew again today and see if you can assign it to me.
Yeah, Tim, he's not able to be here today. He's one of the assignees. And, I think taking this one over would just involve looking at the current comments and trying to update the KEP and then doing a push to either a new KEP that'll obsolete this one or, just addressing the comments that exist. But I don't think Tim would have a problem with you taking this KEP over.
No, I think Tim is the person who asked
okay.
me to take it over, but it's assigned to a different username, Maplan. So I wanted to make sure that it was okay to take it over.
Yeah, they're both, I think not working on. I know Fang Yan is moved on to a different role also.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's worth poking them, right? Seeing. But as far as I know, they've both moved on to different types of roles also.
Okay.
All right.
I'll try to poke Andrew again on Slack. If not, I'll reach out so somebody can poke him by email as well. I think I have his email here.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, Bridget, you're up next with mixed protocol LB service to beta.
This shouldn't be a giant surprise. I think asynchronously, you've talked to a lot of people from different clouds. 2 points that are kind of obstacles. One, perhaps interesting for Max. Google, as per Tim, is not quite ready for this, but it probably wouldn't be terrible for someone, maybe Max, to go in and just get Google ready for this. And other providers that aren't implementing it right now are just putting in an error instead of users getting undefined, which isn't a great thing to get. And then the other question I had about was kubeproxy. I think SIG Network owns kubeproxy, right? So like, who can tell me, is kubeproxy ready for mixed protocols? Or maybe, basically, I'm just looking for who should I follow up with this on?
I remember to look into this. If you give me a heads up next week, I can.
Perfect.
I know that he has something implemented, but I don't remember what is missing in kubeproxy. But
awesome. Okay.
I
will follow up with Antonio. Item completed. Thank you.
And I can follow up inside Google on the other side. We'll make sure we update that issue.
Awesome. I just don't want Google to have its customers get question mark and everyone else's customers get a perfectly good error or success. You know, that would just be sad.
Makes sense.
All right. Thank you. And Antonio, you are up with optionally disable node ports for service type load balancer ready for GA.
Yeah, this is another KEP that was on Andrew's. I'm going to ping Andrew on Slack to see if because I think that the only thing missing was some E2E tests, and we added it. They merged it yesterday. So I was going to propose if anybody wants to contribute and move this forward. It's kind of review was. I think that everything is merged, also the KEP, and the only thing missing is to remove the feature gates and these kind of things. So I don't know if
Is this a good first issue, maybe?
Oh no, first issue no, because you need to go. You need to know where are the feature gates and all the things. I think that is a good first issue for people that is coming to the SIG network meetings and want to get something.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, I can volunteer. I made a pull request in the code in the first time, so I can finish it off.
I'm going to ping Andrew to have to know, so he can know that we are taking over these steps. But this was ready for GA.
Okay, and you've got the next two anyway, Antonio.
Yeah,
so
I have
why don't you just keep
all of
going.
them. Okay, this is so Dan Winship is here. Okay, and Carl is not here. So this is about this one issue reported by some people. Well, I don't remember the name. So the issue that they have is that they have they deploy a dual stack cluster in a cloud provider environment. I don't remember. I think that is OpenStack. But the thing is that the cloud, once they reboot the nodes, the cloud provider takes longer to assign the second IP. So the result is that the host network pods only take the first IP because we never update. So when the cloud provider assigns the secondary IP address, kubelet thinks that it's an update and it gives only one IP address. So the Cal sent a PR to update always no matter what. And I suggested that it's a breaking change. We should, if we want to do that, we should add a feature gate and so we can roll back in case of problem. But I submitted another PR that instead of updating always the pod IPs when the node IP changes, is just update only add the secondary IP if it wasn't set. But the problem with that is that it's a breaking change with weird behavior that the controller runtimes has assigning IP. It's hard to explain, but I wanted to share this if we can come to a conclusion and solve this issue for dual stack. Dan Winship, if you can comment, because the problem is this has a lot of history behind and it's hard to explain.
Yeah, I mean, I said in the PR, like, this is why we do it the way we do it now. I don't have a strong sense of whether we should be doing it that way or not, and if it's going to break anyone if we change it. Like, I have no information about that.
Anybody has an opinion on of node IPs and if we should roll this change with a feature gate and call it a day, or nobody hit this issue with host network pods and node IPs? No, this
I didn't know we supported changing the node IP in general.
we don't, and the problem is that it never was a thing because usually people has nodes with static IPs. I mean, the first issue was opened by one person that has a Kubernetes node behind an DSL or something. You know, there was acquiring the IP with the HTTP.
Yeah, I mean, isn't the sort of trend to not do that like ever? Like, isn't that where everybody are people moving towards doing more dynamic IPs for nodes? Because I don't know, like, doesn't that break a whole lot of other things? Like, I mean, that breaks your whole CNI and everything else too, right?
That's the thing. That's why I want the feature gate. But in the other hand, we have this other problem, that is this cloud provider that takes longer in assign the second IP. You know? And meanwhile, this IP is not assigned. They have a race, and they are not able to assign the second IP to the pod because we don't allow to update node IP. Anyway.
I mean, I guess this would only make things better in a broken situation. Like everything's screwed up because you changed your node IP, but now there's some thing that is less screwed up. So I guess it's a net positive.
I mean, wouldn't we expect a reboot of something like if that happened?
Right now,
yeah, I think we are not at all interested in changing the case where the primary IP changes. We're only talking about the case where it goes from being single stack to dual stack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm leaning to try to avoid open a new kind of war. Okay.
Honestly, if I understand your PR correctly, I would be okay with it. I mean, we're just adding the second address later. We're keeping pod IP the same, right?
Yeah, but I'm not handling the corner case that Dan Winship said. You know, that okay. When the container runtime wipe out all the IPs.
So let's implement it, put it behind a feature gate, see if anyone complains that we broke their use case.
Sure.
Okay, then I will update that. Okay. And the next item is another cap that this is to solve the problem. So this is targeting the problem that when you assign services and you want to assign the DNS service, for example, and you want that to have the .10 IP. But the problem is that if you are creating services without an static IP, it can randomly take that IP and hijack your services. And this is just not for DNS. There's another issue of another person claiming that. And I was commenting this with Dan Winship and with Tim Hawking. And Tim suggested to say, let's have a range where we are going to allocate all the dynamic IPs. When that range is exhausted, we can take dynamic IPs for the other range. This way we keep the same behavior, but we allow user to specify static IPs in one range without any risk of these IPs to be hijacked. And this is the cap that I opened. Dan Winship commented on that. And I would love if more people can chime in and comment. It's a long-standing request. And I think that this implementation will be backwards compatible. But I mean, there can be always corner cases.
Thanks. I'll take a look.
I have a related question. We have this external Does anybody use external IP regularly and test it? Because we've got, at least in one of the, this is a weird corner case, but like, you know, in one of the proxies, like the external IP thing doesn't work right, where you can set an arbitrary service IP, like, and it's like hard coded in our E2Es to like 203.1.2.3 to see if it works. And it's one of the SIG network, one of the SIG network tests that we run, and I think it generally passes for most people. And I was wondering, does that external IP field, do people use it a lot? Because I don't see people using it, and I don't think the cloud load balancers use it, right? Or do they?
On service, Jay?
I think it's
service object.
Yeah, on the service object. You know, there's the external IP, but then there's the struct, and inside the struct, it has the actual IPs. There's like the two different ways. There's the load balancer part. Yeah.
Yeah, we used that on Calico with BGP. Was instead of publishing a load balancer, having just the external IP, and because you can, in that case, as far as I remember, you can associate. So you have some cases of that external IP in on-premise data centers that you need to publish things, the external IP between services.
And they
was like 6 months ago. I can't remember.
Okay.
In general, you're right. Clouds do not use it. They use the load balancer thing. But historically on OpenShift, people used external IPs on bare metal clusters. That's much less true now with like, you know, Metal LB and stuff.
So Metal LB doesn't even use this.
I thought it did though.
Yeah, it does. Actually, Metal LB recommends use of external.
Okay. That's the one thing that I thought used it. Okay. All right.
There's also been a significant CVE against use of external IP since a while.
Well, it doesn't work in the user space proxy. That's why I that's the only reason I know about it. Okay. Cool. Sorry for interrupting your other thing. But yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. What's the use case, Antonio, for people wanting to reserve static ranges from the service subnet? I'm curious.
So the in the CAP, there is one issue open, and the person that opened the issue describes the scenario very thoroughly. But the common issue is when you have an installer and you want to install the DNS service, you want to reserve the .10 address. But if you start creating services with an IP, the IPs are randomly allocated, so they can take the .10 address. I mean, you create service J1, service J2. One of those can take the .10 address, and then your DNS service is not going to be able to. It's going to fail when you are going to create that with the .10 address. So this way, you know that when you create something, the CAP suggests to reserve the first 32 addresses. When you create something with an static IP address on that range, you know that no other service is going to allocate it randomly by chance. It's a race on installers.
Okay.
All right, anybody who's interested, please review, take a look at it and comment.
So I have one question, this Kural. So there will be the cluster CRT, right? So within that you want to create two pools. One is for static and another one is for dynamic, or the user has to give like two subnets range.
So you don't really create two pools. I mean, everybody can allocate an IP in the decider. The thing is that the dynamic IPs are going to allocate first from the upper range, you know.
Mhm.
So and when you exhaust the range, then the random IPs are going to allocate from the first range. So it's not really doing a hard reservation of IPs, you know. It's just prioritizing the upper range for dynamics.
Okay, good. I will also have a look on that. Yeah, thank you.
Is there like, are people trying to make the API server's allocation of service IPs completely pluggable? Isn't that the thing that you really want, like an IPAM?
I have a cap with 600 comments. You are happy to comment and reopen the.
So you propose that, and okay. But that would obviate this cap, right? Like if you had IPAM, pluggable IPAM.
I mean, so take 1 weekend and go through the. And it's great because every 6 months somebody reopen it and we go through the.
So, okay, so the reason we're doing this is because nobody could agree on how to do IPAM.
The reason is that it's not easy way to change that, and the gain is too small. I mean, the allocators is something that is a bitmap that is hard coded in.
It's already there, and you could just incrementally modify it.
And the problem is that the service API is the only one that takes this transaction, you know, because you request a service, you need to allocate an IP, and the IP has to be unique in all the API servers. And that's the thing, is you cannot make the allocation. What is the name? It's the consensus of the IP. You know what I mean? I don't want to hijack it's 2 minutes. I'm happy to talk with you and go through this because
yeah, good bedtime story.
Yeah. Cal is not here. Calantine knows the details.
Hey, go ahead and put it on the agenda for January 6th. We can go into depth. Start the year off right.
I'm happy to go because I mean it's really interesting.
Oh, definitely. Awesome. Okay, so that is our agenda and we're just about out of time. I want to remind everyone that there's no meeting on December 23rd. So we'll be back here in a month. You can join us on January 6th for this excitement once again. And yes, thank you, Antonio, for putting a link in the chat. And I'll make sure if that isn't in the notes that it gets added. Anyone have anything else before we say goodbye to 2021 and we'll see you in 2022?
Bye, everybody.
Bye, folks.
Thank you all.
See you, everyone.
Thanks,
Happy
Max.
New Year. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye. Take care.